Well, we're sitting here in Cedric Youngelman's house. But before we get started, I want to shout out the sponsors of the show. We got Coddle.co, the best punch plates in the game. So if you have them, or if you have your Bitcoin on exchange right now, what the hell are you doing? Get it off an exchange and store those seed phrases with a punch plate at Coddle.co. Use promo code GreenCandle, all one word. You get 10% off. And then I'm going to be at Bitcoin Miami. Are you going to be at Bitcoin
I'm gonna
Miami?
be there.
All
Can't
right.
wait.
Me and Cedric are both going to be at Bitcoin Miami. So if you haven't gotten your ticket yet, use promo code Green Candle, all caps. And then I'll also have a link in the show notes where you can get 10% off that ticket. So use that 10% to buy more sats. And then, yeah, pull it off in exchange and use the punch plate from coddle.co. So it's all interconnected there. There we go, bringing it all together. But like I alluded to, and as you can see, me and Cedric are sitting here in Cedric's office. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks for having me. Cheers. We got it. We got
Cheers,
to
man.
cheers it up, man.
This was
Uh,
awesome.
yeah. So
My
this is
first
great.
in-person chat.
Yeah. So for those who have been following my show for like since basically inception, you are our first guest on episode 4 when it was me and Dan. Bitcoin price was 44,000 something at the time. And so I think it was like February 2020 or 2022, excuse me. And now what I think we're sitting just under 30K about today. So a lot has changed since then, including your episodes and your podcast and everything like that. So for those who missed that episode, though, give us a quick intro. Who are you and how you got here today?
Sure. My name is Cedric Youngelman. I'm the host of the Bitcoin Matrix podcast. We have philosophical conversations about the social, cultural, and economic impacts of Bitcoin. We try to just really go hard into the rabbit hole and been doing it for about 2.5 years now, over 150 episodes. So yeah, it feels like a decade though.
Yeah, no,
So
I mean, in Bitcoin, the cycles definitely age you to say the least. But I kind of want to get into it because last time when we spoke, we talked a lot about like, podcasting and kind of what got you started in that. But there has been some interesting events in just mainstream media right now, right? I mean, we had Tucker Carlson getting fired, let go, parting ways with Fox. We had Don Lemon kind of going through and getting fired from CNN. So it seems like mainstream media is kind of I guess taking a turn and mediums like podcasts like yours and mine and YouTube, Twitter, like all these different sources are kind of the go-to source for a lot of people's media. So yeah, in your view, how do you see this evolving? And yeah, I mean, what do you see as like I guess your role kind of in that?
sure. Well, it's interesting. You bring up Tucker Carlson and Don Lemon, and I don't know what to make of these situations. Tucker Carlson did apply to be in the CIA at one point. I have no idea what's going on,
I didn't know that.
and yeah, that's interesting to note. And so I don't, and it's not the first network to let go its biggest star. And you've seen things like Joe Rogan and go and build a sort of a platform for himself and make a lot of money. So I have no idea, but it does seem like things are breaking a bit in terms of what news has been hitting us from mainstream media. And even what I'm seeing on Twitter since Elon took over, I see much more wide variety of narratives being shared and conspiracies and things like that. And it also seems like the psychological warfare is amped up. I get even darker narratives on Twitter now and things that I definitely think are trying to manipulate how I feel about certain subjects and sort of how divide people. And then, I mean, Bitcoin is down 50% since we talked.
Yeah, yeah.
That's wild. I don't really feel that. I don't. I mean, I have. We both have podcasts about Bitcoin, and so you're gonna naturally look at the price. But I try to be sort of price agnostic, and it just feels like we're still below 69K.
Yeah.
And trying to see where this goes, and we're hemming and hawing, and puking up and puking down a little bit, but there's a banking crisis since
Yeah.
we talked, and FTX and Celsius.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing though, back to Tucker Carlson and the media, and what we're seeing with like companies like I think the NFL and Nike and Fox and Budweiser is this sort of era of post-capitalism where Um, Profits don't really matter. It's more about sort of messaging and aligning with the state's message. And because most money, I think, is coming more from the state than the actual consumer, or at least, or the ability to make money or to maintain your monopoly on making money comes from the state. So we've kind of, I think that's one of the things that's changed. We're entering sort of post-capitalism era. Um, so
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Yeah, because I mean, just from the stats, I think like Tucker Carlson would pull in like 3 million viewers per or per show. Obviously, like one of the more polarizing figures, but I think it's also kind of interesting timing, right? Because you brought up the messaging, and I think like maybe a day or two ago, I saw a clip on Twitter, like the day or two before Tucker got fired, of AOC interviewing somebody and calling Tucker out
mhm.
specifically saying he's inciting violence and doing all these things too. So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. It seems like it's more about, the messaging behind things opposed to just straight profits, which is, kind of interesting because it's not now like, it was, money or like the viewership was kind of was kind of the currency, right? Because like that's how you can run the ads, do all that kind of stuff. But it seems like people are just more concerned with their reputation in the industry opposed to actually like getting all the eyeballs and getting what people actually want to see or hear, and kind of catering to like a small minority, which is kind of interesting because I think like when it comes to the independents, like maybe like yourself and I, or like Joe Rogan, even some of the bigger like YouTube stars, like I see like the Nelk boys, like Logan Paul, all those guys, they're kind of like flipping it on the other side. And I don't know if you've noticed that as well, but it seems like more people are kind of, I guess, coming around to the narrative of like, hey, we should be worried about, the government's control, like CBDC is like kind of going against taxes, whereas like the narrative that is being pushed on these mainstream platforms is like, hey, the government's helping
Yeah.
us out, and kind of like the exact opposite. Is that something that you're noticing as well, you think?
I mean, it's a lot to unpack there. I'm just
Yeah.
things are. I don't think anyone really gets. I think I think at the top, I think a lot of things are just controlled. I don't even think Joe Rogan, in my mind, in my heart, is independent. I don't buy that. I mean,
Yeah,
Spotify owns him to some extent.
that's true.
And I don't know who owns Spotify per se. And it seems like these larger interests that own these things, they don't have to worry about profits here or there because overall they're going to make money. They own all the companies. Um, it's interesting. Like RFK Jr. is running,
Yeah.
and he's saying very interesting things, but he's been on the Epstein plane,
Yeah.
it seems like the CIA killed his uncle and probably his dad, but like, I don't know, they all seem to play a part. Like his uncle Teddy ran against Jimmy Carter in
Yeah.
Haiti, and like, maybe I think with Tucker Carlson too. I think there's almost this point where if you get too big for mainstream media, they want to put you in that Joe Rogan bucket where they can carve you out a little more of a niche and get you off of the bigger platforms, and then maybe not the bigger platforms anymore, but at least the networks.
Yeah.
Um,
That's fair.
but Tucker was doing really interesting work. I mean, he interviewed the President Bukele of El Salvador. I think said really fascinating things on his show. He interviewed Michael Saylor,
Max Kaiser
Max
too.
Kaiser.
Yeah, I mean, he had a lot of Bitcoiners on there, and it seems like he was kind of starting to, wake up to that narrative. And he was like kind of, it seems like covering more of, like he was really the first mainstream media to kind of dive into, Bitcoin, not crypto. It seemed, and we kind of alluded to it a little bit when we went over like what's changed. And it seems like the mainstream media was like some of them were starting to wake up to like the Bitcoin, not crypto, especially after the FTX, the Celsius, like all those exchanges started to shut down, and people really started to look into this and realize, all right, Sam
Right.
Bankman-Fried is really a fraudster, and like there's a lot of fraud just going up on the crypto market. So yeah, I mean, it seems like I don't know. It almost seems like because of Sam Bankman-Fried's connections and everything, like he's almost kind of in bed with, so many other people, the higher ups and everything like that, that it has me worried about the mainstream quote unquote narrative of Bitcoin because Tucker and like he was basically the biggest guy that was pushing the Bitcoin, not crypto. And now we might revert back to, hey, like, maybe either all crypto's junk or like reverting into, mixing in Bitcoin with crypto, if that
Right.
makes sense, which I think is a dangerous path.
Yeah, I think unfortunately, I didn't want to say this last cycle. I didn't even let my mind think this, but I think crypto will come back again really strong and hard. To be honest, I have so much empathy and sympathy. I don't know if those are the right words, but I get it how if you don't go down the rabbit hole, there's no way for you to know the difference between Bitcoin and crypto. And not no way, but I know it's not intuitive.
Yeah.
And I think it's not intuitive. I also think the things that people that if you get Bitcoin, like self-custody and sovereignty, not a lot of people want that either or understand the value of that. So if they do understand what sets Bitcoin apart, I don't know if they care,
Yeah.
or understand what's at stake there. And then I use that word purposely because proof of stake. I mean, literally, they're putting their ETH into a contract that you can't withdraw. They're saying, I don't care if someone else has full sovereignty over my money. It doesn't tell me when I'm getting it back. It's a very fiat mindset, but like it's kind of like a fish in water. And so yeah, I mean, it was cool that he had Michael Saylor on and Max Kaiser and huge platforms, and
Yeah.
that will get through to some people. Don't get me wrong. It gets through and it helps as a touch point, but I think overall, like, just people don't. I don't want to say people in this case don't care. They just don't even know it's an issue, and they don't know the value of. And most people know a world of like, if I lose my password, there's someone I can call
Yeah.
and help me figure this out.
No, or yeah, or the forgot password button. You just get it sent to your email,
Right.
get it text to you, get it called,
Yeah.
whatever. All these password recovery things. So,
Someone
but
steals your credit card,
yeah,
you get that money back.
yeah, you get the
You
money
know,
back. Or I mean, I actually like not too long ago had fraud on my credit card. So I mean, it was something where I had all that, and then yeah, I just called and got erased. I mean, like credit card companies have to eat that essentially. But yeah, I mean, it is kind of an interesting shift. But from where we were a year ago, like in Bitcoin to where we are now, right? We've already like listed off some of the things that have happened, whether it's like mainstream media kind of covering it, Tucker before he got let go, and some of the debacles. Do you think we've kind of, I guess, shifted a little bit more into, I guess, people understanding? I mean, you kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, or do you still think like we're obviously, we're still early, right? But do you think that there's more? I mean, if to me it feels like there's more and more Bitcoiners coming in every single day, and we're kind of moving that direction. And I don't feel like as many like shit coins are popping up. Maybe I'm just blind to
I
it.
think we're in a bubble, to be honest. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, Bitcoin's still a very small thing, and I also think that Bitcoiners, like any ERs, tend to think that they're the center of the universe,
Yeah.
and that everything that's happening in the world is somehow yin and yang with Bitcoin. Um, and I don't think I do think that every day Bitcoin adoption is like the internet, so it's always going up. There are always new people coming, and no one stops using the internet. Once you start using the internet, no one goes back to not using it. Same thing with Bitcoin, but that's still like you're going from like 0.5% of the world to 0.6% of the world, and that's like a huge 20% leap,
Yeah.
or maybe even it's like 0.5. Maybe if we go to 3% of the world, and exponential, but you're not talking about everybody getting this now. It's still in the gradually period. I talked to a boomer, a coworker of mine, checked in, haven't talked in about 2 years. Mind you, the last time we spoke, Bitcoin was somewhere I'm guessing between 4,000 and 20,000.
Yeah.
And here we are at 28,000. He was like, you still believe in that magical internet money? This was like on a DM, like we haven't spoken in 2 years. And I was like, yeah, it's just computer science, engineering, physics, and economics, but yeah, I call it a belief.
Yeah.
And he was like, ha ha, but I did ask him, like, so you don't believe in it? And I thought a decent reply. He was like, well, if you have 5 or 10 or $20,000 and you want to take a chance on this, and you're not worried about what happens to it, and you want to sit on it, go for it. And I do think that's in a lot of ways, if you don't understand this, a rational approach. I mean, it's the best performing asset 10 of the last 14 years, the best performing asset of this year. It's like watching Michael Jordan win 6 out of 8 and be like, if it comes out of retirement, I'm not going to bet on him.
Yeah.
And this is not even like athletics where there's any wear and tear or entropy.
Yeah.
But, he's still a very much like pushing 70 probably. And he's like, I'm a buy and hold value stock guy. It's worked since 1971, basically. The whole world he's grown up in, and I even made a joke. I was like, okay, now do cash.
Yeah.
And he was like, okay, well, interest rates are getting up to 4 or 5%. I mean, this is where he's thinking. He's thinking about, how do I make 4, 5, 6% a year? He's not thinking about beating inflation. He's thinking, wow, Powell's raising rates. Cash is becoming more valuable.
Yeah, I mean, like for him, from his perspective, I totally get it. You see, I mean, that's what scared my parents. I mean, they're not that, I guess, 70 age, but they're like nearing on the 60s. And that's what their kind of fear was initially. And then, I mean, they were not, privy to holding their own keys. They didn't want to do any of that. So I left it on an exchange for them. And then that exchange, went under. So now I look like the bad guy, and they're like, all right, they never want to talk to me about it again. So, I mean, like that kind of turns off that, generation, I guess, if that makes sense.
There are going to be casualties along the way.
100%. Yeah.
So there's two casualties. The casualty you're talking about where you got rug pulled, right? And that has nothing to do with Bitcoin in a lot of ways. Nothing. Zero to do with Bitcoin.
And that was probably paper Bitcoin too.
Whatever it is, there's nothing to do that. It can happen with crypto. It can happen with stocks. Someone fake sells you anything, right? Or runs off with the kit and caboodle. That could happen in any asset, industry, business. The other one, though, that only can happen with Bitcoin is you lose the shit yourself. So here you are, your brave new world, and you're like, oh, I'm gonna go get some sats, and I'm gonna get it off the exchange. And I don't know if I'm just, none of this stuff like has happened to me, but instead of like you air gap it wrong or whatever XYZ, you tried to take on new technology, you didn't back up your seed the right way, you wrote it down the wrong way, you lost half of it, whatever it might be. And you took the risk, and now you're out some value. And I think a lot of people who in the first world don't want any part of both those things. So if their money's at the FDIC insured bank, up to 250K, they get backed up. Nowadays, probably even more than that. They don't think about inflation, money printing, and how that devalues the time and their labor, right? If they own stock and someone breaks into their Fidelity account or their trust, most likely some party or some entity is going to backstop that. Credit cards, same thing. And most people are more worried about getting more political currency units to deal with whatever problems they're facing. Then why do we have more political currency units? So, and then you're saying, okay, now take this on you. Because most times, anything before Bitcoin, you're like, I don't want to pay taxes. Yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't want to pay a fee to register my boat. Good luck. I don't want to do a driver's license. Good luck. So now if someone's saying like, you don't have to have your money at the bank, and they're like, yeah, good luck.
Yeah.
Like everything in the world before them too. Anytime someone's been like, you can make money doing this or increase the purdy, it's always been a scam in everything they've ever seen in life.
Yeah.
So the red flags go up right away. And then always the kicker, they don't want to sound like us.
Yeah.
They don't want to, they're like, oh, if I then believe in this and it works a little bit for me, I'm gonna have to go around at parties and sound like.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Honestly, like I don't like, it's weird because, even in my generation though, like, I mean, I'm 28, so I'll be like 29 this summer. I have friends that are a little younger than me, a little older, that kind of range or whatever, but I never bring it up to them. Like if they want to talk Bitcoin with me, I bring it up, or I let them come to me. By now they know I have the show and all that kind of stuff. But I'm like, yeah, this is not a conversation I kind of want to dig into because, majority of people, like, I mean, now a few more of my friends are kind of coming up to me and asking me like, what's going on? Like, I know you're following this stuff because of inflation, but before any of this happened, and this kind of like what, maybe the last 6 to 8 months, development. Before any of this happened, nobody really wanted to talk anything about that. They thought it was, funny money is what they would call it. They would joke with me like that. I actually had a buddy too who would say like, "Hey, dude, like I need to go to a mattress or go buy a mattress and hide a bunch of cash under there because that's like the new wave because nobody's doing that anymore. Like getting my money out of the bank and just
Right.
hiding it under the mattress like old fashioned times." So, I think it's just kind of like this new I guess like situation that we're in. I don't even know like a better way to describe it, but just like the reality of going to the grocery store. We're in Florida, so going to Publix, and like I went to Publix the other day, a carton of eggs was like $8, like for like the nicer like organic eggs. And it's like, you know
You gotta
I
go to Dead Wild.
yeah, I go to Trader Joe's honestly, but there's a Publix really close to my house. So
Sure,
so
sure.
every now and then when I run out of eggs, I go there. But and I'm also trying to bulk too. I don't know if you guys can tell on camera, but so I'm eating a lot of eggs every day. But because of that, I mean, it just like they're seeing the inflation. Some of them are even like considering getting chickens or all this other wild stuff where it's like, all right, you live in like
Mhm.
a big city, like you shouldn't really need to do that, but it seems like everybody's kind of reverting to, okay, everything's getting more expensive, so I need to quit relying on everybody else and become more self-sovereign, which I think is like kind of an interesting.
I think that's the Bitcoiner bubble. I think a lot of people are going like this. They're saying everything's gone up 15 to 30%. I got a 3% raise at work. I need to wear, and I don't want to give up anything.
Yeah.
So
Well,
they're like, okay, I don't want to give up eggs. How do I get eggs? They're not like, oh, I want to be sovereign.
yeah,
They're like, how do I make eggs cheaper? Because I'm still gonna go to the bar. Maybe if you're 28, 20, I
yeah,
still want to go to the bar, and now drinks are $11 a piece.
yeah,
Okay, so what do I have to like? Okay, maybe I'm gonna give up my gym membership, work out at home. And so I think it's more like lifestyle people. People are still going out. Everywhere I go, people are doing and living their lives. And I just don't understand how mathematically this is still happening. So that you look at just macro, like credit card rate usage has
yeah,
gone up dramatically. People are working second and third jobs, and they're buying chickens so they can
yeah.
save money on eggs. I don't think there's some people like, yeah, I want to get guns and bullets and cows and be sovereign. And then I think the majority of people are like, how do I save a few bucks? I'll
Yeah.
make my own shampoo. It's not because they're becoming homesteaders.
That's
You
fair.
know,
That is
they're
fair.
just like,
Yeah.
how do I? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean that's a good point too, right? I mean, like everybody's trying to find ways, and I think that's kind of like, the revelation that I had with Bitcoin, where it's like, all right, like I was really at the time when I found Bitcoin, I was like really studying, like, all right, how do I make my money go farther? Because like I was in grad school at the time, and it was like, all right, I'm gonna start making money soon, which I know I'm kind of weird for doing that. Most people are just kind of like, all right, well, I'm gonna start making money and then just put it in my checking account and whatever. And then I realized like, there's this Bitcoin thing. I'd buy some stocks here or there too, but it was like, I was spending all this time coming home, like researching, reading 10Ks, like doing all this stuff. It's like basically like another full-time job where I'm like becoming my own, financial advisor, so to speak. And so I was like, well, it's just so much easier if I know Bitcoin, I know that, I believe in it, all this other stuff. Like, I don't need to research it every single day and like kind of like understand like,
yeah,
all right, there's going to be a little price move here or there, but long term I believe in the technology. It's like, all right, long term you believe in some stock, right? Like, all right, Apple for example, right? Like it's been around for so long, it has a nice dividend, whatever. Like if you think that that company is going to be around forever, might as well just like throw some in it, but instead of like doing some research to try to beat the market. But I realized like, all right, why am I doing all this when Bitcoin beats the market like every
right.
year, just like you kind of lined out?
Well, what you were saying, I mean, I came at it a similar way in the sense that, I was a little further along in my career and trying to figure out how to keep up with inflation was my main concern outside of work when managing sort of like my affairs, my business, my financial affairs. And I have a background I have a Bachelor of Science in Finance and a Master's of Science in Accounting. So, and at 13 years old, I won the Long Island stock market competition through Newsday newspaper. in my gifted program at my local junior high. I mean, I was always interested in sort of when I say business, more like running businesses, not necessarily starting them, but running them, understanding them, economics. And Bitcoin was not a technology to me at all. And it wasn't really money at first. It took me to understand some things that I didn't necessarily learn in those programs about what is money and how money works and creates money. But I really looked at it as a way to beat inflation. But as someone who, with my background, it was very like ding, ding, ding. Like, why is 30% of the economy financialized?
Yeah.
Why am I spending all this time trying to figure out how to just save my purchasing power? But also from an accounting and finance perspective, Bitcoin outside of being a technology was monetary policy and just running the numbers. I mean, Pierre Rochard is a very influential speaker on a lot of Bitcoin topics, but one was, I mean, he comes from an accounting background as well. He's like, just run the numbers. And we said, well, what numbers are you talking about? And he started, well, this thing is infinite
Yeah.
and has zero production cost or is trending to zero. And this thing is finite and gives you a fixed denominator and a unit of account. And it's designed to go up in purchasing power. What does it mean designed to go up in purchasing power? You start to understand that. Well, it'd be good to have something designed to go up in purchasing power. And it can't be replicated or iterated like real estate, Manhattan. They can create more land in Manhattan. They can build out Manhattan. They can connect it to Brooklyn if they want. They can connect it to Jersey. They could lose the rivers if they want. They fill those in. They could build higher. And like everyone's using that as a store of value. Fine art can be replicated or not replicated, but you have fashion risks. There's always new artists that might outpace the thing you bought or invested in. And you have unit price bias or divisibility issue. You can't buy a slice of a Mona Lisa.
Yeah.
Even though I think a terrible painting. I don't get it. But like fashion, that's what's in fashion,
Yeah.
and it has Lindy effect. And you might have a better piece of art that no one cares about, and you could sit on it for how long. It's not guaranteed to go up in purchasing power.
Yeah.
The way this thing is designed to. And just as an accountant, I just kept running the numbers. So there's only 21 million. Like you start to really like, what is that? What does it mean to like a fixed? You start thinking about it like the way Robert Breedlove talks about the number zero and how humanity didn't even know there was a number zero for a while, or wouldn't admit to it, or didn't acknowledge it, or recognize it. People would say, "What do you mean you can't sell me 0 apples?" Ha ha! Zero doesn't exist. You can't have a negative of something. Well, we can't do a lot of math without the number zero and the principle of negative numbers. And so like now we have a fixed point in the universe, like 21 million Bitcoin. Like, no human can change that. But just running the numbers on that over and over and thinking about how you manage your wealth, your value, and even if you have like no accrued value, how you're gonna store whatever value you're going to accrue in the future. And then I was always trying to provide value for my family, but you're thinking more about like how you spend your time and how when you give someone a dollar bill, in a way you're stealing from them. Like you're giving them a lie. Like you're like, hey, here's this shitty money.
Yeah.
And I give it to you. Ah, like it's gonna go down. I got your shit. Like, and Bitcoin's a very different thing. And I'm not advocating people spend their Bitcoin or spend in a place. And I don't think of it necessarily as spending technology at all. But like in things where I deal with other Bitcoiners, I've paid for things in Bitcoin out of principle.
Yeah.
And almost like foregoing any concerns with the government and transactional issues. And because I know the first thing they're gonna say is, did you receive, buy, or spend Bitcoin, and try to even put you on a list.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean that's all like, I mean you're nailing it on the head, but I think like what I kind of want to go into a little bit is like you reverted to, like your background, right? So you have like a general accounting background and master's of science, all that kind of stuff. So, you were kind of brought up in, I guess, the traditional fiat system, which seems to be kind of turning on its head a little bit now, right? We had what was it? Silicon Valley Bank, and then we had FRC. What was it? First Republic Bank, or maybe it's FRB or whatnot. First Republic Bank and some other ones, and there's been a lot of cracks, it seems like, in that banking system right now. But in response to all these banks failing, Bitcoin's always had a really good day. I think today it was up like 8 or 9%. I think when Silicon Valley Bank failed,
We
it was
lost all that 8 or 9%, but
oh,
we
did
gave it
we
all back
really?
and then some. Yeah,
Oh,
we're at like
geez.
28.2 right now.
Oh yeah, did we really?
Oh yeah, we puked it all up.
Wow.
We're down
Okay.
to 27 something.
Okay.
After we
So
went up to 30. It's fun. It was a fun day. Volatility's back.
yeah, I mean, well,
Like,
hey,
it's a volatility.
that means volatility's back, right? But still the point though is that it seems like Bitcoin, like on these news breaks, seems to do well, and then maybe it fell back down because of the debt ceiling, right?
I heard.
We raised
I
the
love
debt
these
ceiling.
rumors. No, I heard
Yeah,
these rumors. The government sold the Mount Gox coins, and why did the government have the Mount Gox coins? I have no idea. And they seem to have perfect timing.
yeah,
Every time lately, when it was we were trying to get to 20, every time we got to like 19.9, someone sold it a bunch. And I don't even know if it's sold. I mean, it could be the paper markets, it could be the futures. I have no idea how these things move on a daily, hour-to-hour basis, and it does look rigged to me, but I'm not saying it is, and I don't know nothing. But
yeah. But what is rigged, right? The overall stock market seems to be rigged,
I
and
agree.
like trading was halted for FRC Bank today, and because of like the volatility and other things like that. But it seems like people are kind of waking up to the fact that there's cracks in the current financial system.
Yes.
So, do you, I guess, kind of see the bank failures almost as like a positive for Bitcoin, or do you think that that's going to be a negative? And I want to hear
Well,
your point, and then I kind of,
I mean, they look whether the market interprets them, because I don't like to really interpret the market.
yeah,
But I mean, it's fun to armchair psychology, but I'm not in that game professionally. But I think the market's been receiving the bank news as a positive for Bitcoin. Bitcoin's been responding well to, and that's how it should go.
yeah,
And I think that that signal is important. And over the last 2 to 3 years, it's been really a dismay. I've been dismayed by how good news has not, or things that are good for Bitcoin directly or shine a light on Bitcoin, has not always resulted in a positive uptick for Bitcoin. Like when President Bukele announced El Salvador was going to make Bitcoin legal tender, it dumped.
mm-hmm.
It was very strange. And that's what, but I think that these are signals to people that are listening. I mean, like the fact that like these companies can have $8 billion in cash at a bank, and then it's going to be guaranteed, and are making people question things. And if the assets aren't worth at this point in time what the liabilities are, you can always have a bank run. It's very interesting in this time with bank runs, because the digital nature of money,
Yeah,
how fast money can move. Like you don't have to go to your bank and sit there and wait in line and 5,000 a day. Like you can just go on Robinhood, take all your money out of a cash account, money market, go onto your Bank of America app, your Chase app. What I think is also interesting about the markets, because you're talking about like, even like I think stock was halted maybe on First Republic today.
yeah, well,
and those kinds of things.
yeah.
Like, so Bitcoin, when you run the numbers, has been like running longer continuously and for more total time than the S&P 500.
Yeah,
Because it doesn't ever shut down, and the S&P 500 shuts down every weekday at 4 o'clock and every weekend.
Yeah.
So it just in terms of actual like pure, what should be known as like, or what should be seen as a Lindy effect of like more veteran history, more. It's just really interesting, but I don't know if people are really connecting the dots yet. I don't know.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up because I think in the short term it's positive for Bitcoin, but in the long term it might be a little negative, and I'll say why. So in the short term, I think the average Joe is like, all right, maybe my money is not safe in a bank. Now they've kind of like gone through this whole thing, like, all right, you have to put your money in a bank account. This is a safe avenue to do it. Maybe they're looking for an alternative. That's where they find Bitcoin. But in the long term, I think, especially with Silicon Valley Bank, there was, crypto companies that had money in Silicon Valley Bank. And so the regional banks kind of showing cracks and whatnot, it's going to, one, like make less regional banks in the United States, which is going to make it harder for a small business to go and get a loan and other things like that. They're going to get swallowed up by the big players, which like, tinfoil hat time, that could like get swallowed up by the big four. We could end up like Canada, where they have like six big major banks. And then it's like easier to implement something like a CBDC. But that obviously would be like well down the line. And then the other thing is too is like Silicon Valley Bank had like crypto companies that were banking there, so that leaves the opening for now regulation on crypto to come down hard. And I hate to do it, but they're gonna group in Bitcoin with crypto, I think, because people like Elizabeth Warren still don't do it. They've basically run their whole campaign on like an anti-crypto task force. So, I really don't trust politicians on either side. I think one party like faces crypto a little bit worse than the other one, but at the same time, I don't really, trust the people in power. But I think that they're, once they kind of realize like, hey, I'm going to lose a lot of power if I kind of let it up to Bitcoin. They're going to be like, all right, well, we ran on this campaign to get Bitcoin as, legal tender or whatever they ran it on, be lighter on Bitcoin, whatever it is that their platform is. They got elected, and then they have all these regulatory pressures when they get elected, and then they come down hard on Bitcoin. And maybe that's just the cynic in me, where I'm just like, I don't believe anything that these people are saying. But I think that, yeah, like I said, like short term, people will kind of wake up to the banking system's bullshit. But long term, there's going to be a lot of regulations. What do you kind of think about that? You think, oh, you think,
like you said, but I kind of see it almost the opposite. And it's just funny. I think that like the harder they crack down on Bitcoin and crypto long term, I think the Streisand effect comes into play. But I say that very sensitively because again, I think that we're looking at something like where 80 to 90% of the people, the 80-20 rule, are going to be like, yeah, Bitcoin, crypto, bad. You can't buy my Bitcoin, crypto with my CBDC. You shouldn't be able to. You shouldn't be able to buy guns with your CBDC money either. You shouldn't be able to buy sugar and soda either. And I'm not saying people should drink sugar and soda and not buy guns or whatever you want to do. But like the point is, like, I don't think there should be rules on your money. But a lot of people are going to agree with it. But we're still so small that like if you advertise that 10%, you can still grow fantastically over here. It's just I don't think that like necessarily. I think that's going to work for them. I think the regulations are going to work. They're going to scare a lot of people away, and but you're still going to grow maybe in leaps and bounds because you're still so very small to start. And eventually, the suddenly will happen. I don't know where it is.
yeah,
But because I think the more you tell people literally that they can't buy things with their money, like I look back at like I think a lot about like Silk Road.
yeah,
I'm almost certain I heard about Bitcoin at least once by Silk Road, like whether it was before, during, or after Silk Road, something about Silk Road. And I don't know if I heard about it at least once before that. But like, let's think about the Silk Road thing. I'm like, oh wow, like I'm thinking like this is like an eBay or a PayPal thing, like where you have like a built-in unit currency and you could buy things and somehow, some way, I'm not analyzing it, but like the government and the bank can't stop you from doing it. Great, but like I'm not saying everything I bought back then was legal, but like I didn't need to go on the internet to buy it.
yeah,
So, but I think there are benefits to Silk Road from all other issues, just about, in terms of the way, like, yeah, but I think that, it wasn't a problem everyone was having.
yeah,
Like for a lot of people, maybe use Silk Road for drugs. You can go to a back alley, you can go to your friend, your neighbor, your cousin, and maybe you weren't in Peter McCormack's situation where he wanted to get some for his mom and it wasn't legal in the country, and whatever.
yeah.
Because I believe in that sort of freedom and that right of choice. But I don't think Silk Road was like everyone's. It wasn't a solution for everybody because not everyone thought they had that problem.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't even know if it was like thought. Everybody just didn't face that problem, right? I mean, I think like I don't know. I like I mean, if you want, like, I feel like like, especially like right now, like, if you want to go get, I don't know, weed or whatever it is, like, even though it's legal here as like medical, like, if you don't have a medical thing, like, I don't think it's like going to be super hard for somebody to go to a bar or
No,
something
but
like that.
you're still buying from a large corporation
Yeah, no,
as a
exactly.
medical, you know. And what was interesting about Silk Road is I remember Peter McCormick talking about this a lot. It was really interesting. Is like, you know, like if you were like a hard, he had issues with some hardcore drugs too, I think. I don't want to speak on Peter too much, but like me, like you can go on Silk Road and you could be like, if you like into heroin, you could be like, who has the best heroin? There were like reviews and
Oh
ratings,
yeah,
which actually, you know, like now, I mean, so maybe someone could get heroin in the back alley, but maybe they weren't getting the best heroin,
yeah, the best.
but they
Yeah,
didn't know the value add of the proposition is what I'm trying to say, and they didn't see the difference in using that money to get something different than they were able to. And all of it because this is nascent technology and
yeah,
very new. And even now, we're still so like even just in terms of self custody and even just in terms of liquidity, like if Fidelity was like, hey, yeah, I want to go Bitcoin only, and I got 3 trillion in cash, or like I got 400 billion in cash, and I want to liquidate all these shitty stocks and go Bitcoin. They can't dump that in Bitcoin right
yeah.
now.
It would be crazy.
They
Yeah,
would outbid themselves.
yeah. No,
You
I mean,
know,
100%. I mean, people look at Michael Saylor and what he's doing at MicroStrategy like he's a lunatic, right? I mean, like,
well, that's what's it. I thought I bring up. I thought that would have been a much clearer signal to other corporations by now.
yeah.
I'm very surprised that didn't like.
Well,
You had El Salvador, a
yeah,
country. You had a corporation that's publicly listed, and the fact that those kind of like price went down every time Sailor rise.
yeah.
It's amazing. Or
Well,
announces that he's
after
bought.
every time that he announces, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, like, there's other countries that are kind of on teetering on it right now, right? I mean, we've had senators in Mexico, we've had senators, but the problem is like I think the big dogs still have the power, right? So I mean, it's like China does everything against it. Russia might be embracing Bitcoin. Who knows? Like they've kind of been rumors about them mining or whatever, but the U.S. has been kind of anti-Bitcoin, sort of. I don't know.
So
I mean,
disappointing.
yeah.
It's
Eh,
frustrating on that level.
yeah, so I mean, I guess on the US note, like where do you think that it's going? Like, do you think that because like I've had kind of several thoughts on this and I've had like different discussions with like I think there's like really like three avenues that the US could go. The US could embrace Bitcoin fully, go on like a Bitcoin standard, make Bitcoin legal tender like El Salvador. They could do the complete opposite, ban Bitcoin, think it's nothing and try to get rid of it. Or they could kind of almost weaponize the US dollar and kind of instead of going on the gold standard, go on like a Bitcoin standard where they have the Bitcoin backed dollar and kind of go with that. So I guess, it's been kind of like you said, disappointing on what they're doing, but where do you think this is all headed? Like I mean, I put you on the spot here and make you do a prediction, but I mean,
Sure.
yeah,
I mean, I think with the current administration, we're headed in a not so positive direction. I think we're headed not necessarily towards a CBDC. I don't know if America and the Federal Reserve will adopt that, but I think they'll further digitize and regulate and restrict monetary policy and capital controls. I do think with the current regime, who knows what happens over the next 4, 6, 8, 10 years in terms of politics. I don't imagine America adopting or going on a Bitcoin standard anytime soon. I think the dollar still has a lot of wind in it left. I don't know if that's again a decade or 50 years or how that plays out. I see. I think Luke Mikic really has an interesting perspective on how the Bitcoin milkshake drinks the dollar milkshake, which drinks all the other fiat and everything else in the world. And I think you go through this period of time where dollar liquidity in this sort of retail consumer everyday usage, especially in these anything that gets sort of hyper Bitcoinized will get dollarized first. So our currencies will get inflated away around the world, which will bring tremendous liquidity to the dollar. they'll go to the dollar next, probably for unit of account and for spending money and even and then I think that becomes like a bridge, a bigger and bigger bridge to Bitcoin.
Yeah.
Over time, and as there's more on ramps, whether they deny us the ability to buy or sell Bitcoin for a period of time. Like eventually, more and more on ramps will happen. More as money becomes more digitized, it just becomes easier to trade or swap it for other assets and things. So I don't know. I think the U.S. is going to fight Bitcoin for a while. I don't see it as an all-out war where they're going to come and ask you for your Bitcoin. But I do think they're gonna like try to get your friends, family, and neighbors to think you're bad for holding Bitcoin. Sort of the way like they got people to think like you're bad if you hoarded gold in the 20s or 30s. I'm using hoard almost like sarcastically. I don't think there's anything wrong with hoarding money. If you can't hoard money, you'll hoard something else.
Yeah.
Whether it's a house or other things that you can store your value in. And hoarding is sort of natural, but I think they'll make Bitcoiners into sort of economic terrorists, social terrorists, and they'll sort of make us an outsider group for a while. And I think other people who like and appreciate freedom and love freedom will look to Bitcoiners as sort of like economic instigators or revolutionaries that way. But so I think it'll be a little bit more of a social war.
That's interesting that you put it that way because, yeah, I mean, I always thought like kind of the way that it would play out would be, maybe like choke point 2.0 or what they've kind of been describing, right? Like, you know, like basically like trying to eliminate or attack the on ramps. But, you brought up an interesting point about like, just the ease of moving money, which we kind of alluded to when it comes to the bank run. So, I never really thought about that, but like essentially just being able to get on a phone and transfer money from a Chase Bank to, I don't know, Capital One, Bank of America. Like you could do that stuff essentially instantly. And it seems like there would just be it would be easy to make an app fairly quickly to essentially, move Bitcoin or something like that, or figure that out, or, make a web app, or, phone app, something along those lines. So, yeah, I mean, it seems like choke point 2.0 seems like it would maybe make it more difficult in a sense just to buy from a bank account, but it doesn't seem like it would necessarily stop it to me. I don't know.
Well, I think at that point, if they really like said like you cannot buy Bitcoin in America, I think at the point they say that, you'll find out, not you being like you or me, individuals or anyone listening, but like people who've been either philosophically at that point committed to Bitcoin and sovereignty, which I think becomes intertwined if you believe in freedom and sovereignty and value it. For me, Bitcoin made me value those things a lot more than I did before I learned about Bitcoin. For some people, maybe they come in freedom, sovereignty first, and then find Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But I think for those people, it's got to be really easy to get it. So I think if you really value those things and so either you value it philosophically or you've put some of your economic or personal wealth into Bitcoin at that point, you're going to be like, whoa, like, because for me, it was like when a state said certain people with a medical record can go into restaurants and certain people with medical records can't.
Yeah.
Well, whoa, like I don't care what anyone's done individually, like I can't live in a state that would install rules like this, right? So for me, like if I understood Bitcoin and I valued it and I had none, but the state was like, you can't own Bitcoin, I'd be like, well, I don't know if I want to live here, right? And then there's some spectrum of like, well, if you have none, maybe maybe you're going to still live there, right? But if you have some, because you got like, are you going to, a state says you can't do X, Y, and Z. Well, okay, great. I don't agree. I don't even want to do X, Y, and Z, but I don't agree that the state said that. But am I going to grab friends, family, the schools the kids are in, their friends? Like it's a lot to moving with your feet.
Mm-hmm.
Then the other side of it is, are there decent places to go? Like right now, there's no perfect place in the world to go. Mm-hmm. Even Florida and Texas and El Salvador are not perfect on some fronts, and whether it's you like to ski, you're not going to find a lot of that in Florida, right? And if you like to surf, You're not going to find a lot of that in Texas. So,
Yeah.
so there's nowhere perfect, but then we can go on taxes or this or that. So, but I do see like countries restricting movement more. I don't think they want the commoners traveling and partaking in the wonders of the world. And I see borders really coming back hard in the times we're moving in this um, pandemic era.
That's interesting that you put it that way, and it makes me feel like that the Plan B passport that like Katie the Russian and Jessica Hodler are kind of doing, making it more important.
It is,
Just
but
for
it's still
them.
temporary. Like
Yeah.
temporary in nature, like it's not full sovereignty. Like you might have a
100%.
second passport to go to X, and you should have bought the one to Y.
Oh, a hundred
You
percent.
screwed up. So you have a second passport, but you bought the ones at a shitty country. Now you need three, you need four, and can you afford to move? Do you want to move? Do you want to give up what you have? Or I know there are people who are like, I do think there's like, let's say there's a place you don't like, and you could say, hey, I got a high time preference, whether that's I'm young and I want to do something else, or I'm older and I got a family. And then there's people like, hey, this is where I'm from, and I don't care if it takes 20 years. But like, we're not leaving. We're gonna raise the next generation here, and we're gonna stay and figure this out. And we'll go through the bumps and the grind. There's some merit to that. You can't always cut and run. The grass isn't always greener. Things can always change where you go.
No, 100%. And
And
but I definitely think that there was kind of some signs of especially, obviously we went through 2020 and all that kind of
yeah,
stuff. Like,
2021 too.
yeah, 2021, where like a lot of people like saw the, I guess, like states putting in heavy regulations, and the United States was just kind of like, I guess, almost like a microcosm of the globe, right? I mean, we saw a lot of people flock to Texas, Tennessee, even, and Florida,
Arizona,
Arizona.
Wyoming.
The states that stayed more open seem to, benefit from that. And so, I think eventually people are going to understand where incentives lie, and they're going to go to those places. I think,
You got more optimism than I
yeah, I
do.
mean, I just
I'm
kind
in
of,
a pessimistic mood. I mean, people. It's been. I don't want to say disappointing, but yeah. I mean, I still think people are just going. I think it's a shit. Like even dial it back pre 2020 and understanding the value of Bitcoin. It sucks that someone as a dentist, a plumber, a teacher, a postal worker, whatever it is, and they have to come home and figure out, spend 30% of their fucking time figuring out what to do with their money.
oh,
Like
100%.
that's ridiculous, and that's not their fault.
Oh, it's not at all. Yeah.
And like that's even pre-COVID, pre-everything, like that existed. You're trying to like, should I be in this mutual fund or that mutual fund? Should I give 3% to this advisor? Uh, and those guys don't. It's all credentialism. These are like, most of these financial advisors have never made any money in their life for themselves.
They all do the
You
same
know,
thing too. They just dump it in mutual funds, which
100%.
take
Well,
fees, and then they take
right.
fees from that too.
And the whole job of the mutual fund is to buy the shitty assets from the hedge fund and the
Yeah.
private equity and get dumped on, especially the teachers' pensions all around the world in the country. So, but most people don't. It's like it's not their fault that all that's happening behind their back,
No,
and it's
100%.
all being like you look at The Big Short. Like that movie is very confusing for people who, let's just say, are not Bitcoiners and don't have a finance background, and I find it incredibly entertaining, but it's like a little chewy for some people, and that's all done on purpose. They tell you that in the movie.
Yeah.
Um,
No, I mean 100%. Yeah, they kind of dive into that. I mean, it just overall, it's just kind of, yeah. I mean, it's disappointing like where this thing is going, but I don't know. I'm optimistic because I see like, I think just like seeing some, like I alluded to a little bit earlier in the conversation, like big YouTubers like Jake and Logan Paul, like for example.
I put them; they're controlled opposition.
Yeah, but
I hate to say that word. It's all fake. They're
but
fake too.
I know 100% they're fake, but when they're talking about, hey, like, I don't like paying taxes and I'm going to move to Puerto Rico because, yeah, it sounds like,
It's like crazy talk.
yeah, that's
They
fake.
do that purpose. That they're Alex Jones to normal people.
That's fair.
Oh wow, like Jake Paul, he got $11 million to a fake fight,
But you
and
think,
he's going to Puerto Rico. Me and Jimmy aren't going to Puerto Rico.
but
We tables at Applebee's. We don't have crypto income to hide.
yeah, but
We're not going to Puerto Rico, and Jake Paul's an idiot.
well, I
Like,
think like okay, I think that for 30 plus when they look at Jake Paul.
sure,
But I
sure.
think like the younger generation,
Maybe.
like Gen Z, they look at these people and they actually like take some influence on them. I mean, there's a reason why they're called influencers, right? I mean, like what they say has carries some weight, right?
It does. I agree.
And I mean, like what they
a lot of it.
yeah, and like that's why a lot of them are getting sued for pushing these shit coins too, because like
That was them rug pulling their audience.
yeah, I know. I mean, 100%.
It's like anyone who's following these people being influenced, and like they're dumb.
Yeah,
they're not getting the right. They're getting noise, and the people that are smart are moving on from these people in some degree. Like they might find it entertaining, and you can find anything you want entertaining, but they're like not taking advice from Jake Paul. If
look,
like,
I'm not advocating.
If they know that Jake Paul's dumping on them, or add any accountability to anyone in crypto, even Tom Brady.
Yeah.
Wow, like even Larry David.
Yeah.
Like Larry David was on TV. Like you cannot lose. Like I am the ultimate idiot. He got paid. I'm making this number up.
Yeah.
10 million. He's not the fool. But the joke was he's the fool, and you would be smart if you bought the stuff Larry David tells you not to buy. Like they're literally laughing at you, like rug pulling, like. And I think all these influences, anyone.
Oh, it's a terrible. Yeah,
they're all working against.
No, I mean it's a terrible culture, right?
But
I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, yeah, right. You got to follow.
There's signals, yes.
You got to follow the paper trail, right? I mean, where do the incentives lie with a lot of these things, right? And so, I mean, I think like, okay, right, like Logan and Jake Paul, right? They're idiots, right? I mean, they made their
they're really smart.
Well,
they might play the role of it. I don't know.
Yeah, no, but I'm saying they're idiots in the sense that
they make a lot of money. I'm not gonna. I mean, they come across as idiots to me. I don't know what they're like.
100%. That's the key that I'm getting at, right? Is that they're playing the role of like they're idiots online, but people enjoy what they do online.
Sure.
They figured out a niche or whatever it is. Like whether it's them, like Nelk Boys, or even like Barstool or whatever, like you're kind of into online. But all these people have like such a big influence that FTX even sponsored Barstool. Like
right.
Some of these people like are getting crypto in front of their faces, and enough crypto is getting in front of people's faces where I think enough people are looking into it, and which makes me a little like optimistic where it's like, okay, like I think, Bitcoiners and shitcoiners disagree on a lot of stuff. But the one thing that they do agree on is that the current system and the current monetary system is not doing the right thing. And so, do you disagree or agree with me?
I think that crypto people are closer to Bitcoin by default than non-crypto people. I very much understand that. I think that like it's really, really hard to avoid a crypto shitcoining phase and get into Bitcoin. I've heard stories. I think these people are admirable. It's great. It's kind of like marrying your high school sweetheart. It's it's rare, it's beautiful, it's probably the best thing ever. But crypto is a very normal thing for most people to go through. But we're kind of getting at something there. But I think
I think it's like basically the doorway in. Is what I'm saying. It's like,
yeah, I agree.
Like, is it basically what I'm getting at here? Is
crypto and not go through the full door.
Oh, 100%.
And I think that's like
well, I mean, it's gonna take a little bit for everybody, right? But I think like, okay, like Jake Paul bringing up like, all right, I'm going to Puerto Rico for not paying like I don't want to pay.
I love taxes or whatever.
Yeah, or whatever they say about all these things. It's like, okay, well, maybe I like that opens the door. Like I search up some XYZ poopy dog coin or whatever.
I see a little different. I see I see crypto as people being as pure desperation. So people are like, my money's not working. Nothing is fucking working. I've been in the mutual funds. I've been in the S&P 500. It's not working. I mean, S&P stands for Standard and Poor. You're not going to get
Yeah.
anywhere with that, right? So I'm still standard. I'm poor, right?
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up, and every time I try to get ahead, I get a 4% raise. Well, camp went up 6%, and tuition went up 7%. I got these new bills I didn't expect because I had another child. You know, like
Yeah.
I can't keep up with any of this. I'm desperate. I need nothing's gonna work. And there's literally sitting there going, okay, like I look at all these tables, and all these tables are wrong. But let's say like you're 38 years old and you're like, I should have 700,000 in my 401k, and I have a sixth of that.
Yeah.
And you're like, um, okay, mutual funds I'm looking at are gonna get me 7% a year. I'm never gonna catch up. So you're like, I need some long shots, right? So now someone comes and tells you about Bitcoin, right?
Or some
Or
other
whatever, right?
crypto. Yeah.
Let's say Bitcoin. So they're
Yeah.
like, oh, you tell me about Bitcoin. I'm like, all right. So they're like, all right, Brandon, tell me about Bitcoin. Brandon's been in Bitcoin for like 3 years, right? So Brandon, I don't know, maybe Brandon's got some Bitcoin, right? So if I put like a lot of money in Bitcoin, what's a lot of money for me? Maybe I put 1,000, $5,000 in Bitcoin, and it doubles. It's not gonna change my life. Triples, not gonna change my life. 10x's, maybe I get a new car after taxes, right? So, and whatever it is, Brandon's ahead of me, so I'm never gonna catch him. So what I want to do is I want to hate Bitcoin because this guy, I don't want him to be ahead of me forever. Like maybe he's got a lot of Bitcoin and he's been just stacking it. Man, he's talked about it when it's cheaper. So maybe someone gave him a bunch. You know, he's in the Bitcoin scene, or maybe I don't know, he mines it for free. So he's got 1,000 Bitcoin, right? So if he got 1,000, he's got 100 Bitcoin. So if Brandon's worth 2 million of this fake money, 3 million, and if Bitcoin goes up 10, Brandon's worth 30 million, and I got 50 grand of Bitcoin. Man, I can't put in more than 5 grand. I'm not gonna sell all my stocks, all my 401k. I've been working my whole life for this stuff, my house, well, go on this thing I don't know. So now I don't want that to do well. I want to find my own thing. I want to find what Brandon is. I want to find what he found. I want to go to the casino and gamble. I
Yeah.
want to buy something for $1 and pray that's going to hit $1,000, and my 5 grand is going to be worth 500 grand. And you know what? My 500 grand is going to outdo Brandon and his little Bitcoin now because I found the next thing. Mine, because even if Bitcoin is 10, I'm going to do 100x. I'll go out there, and if I don't hit the 100x, well, I'm still here, shitty fucking world. And I hope none of it passes. I hope Bitcoin fails and the thing I bet on fails, right? Because
Yeah.
I don't understand this thing. And this thing costs 28 grand. And it sounds like if you only have one of them, but they don't understand. I use that lightly because it's not that they don't understand, but like with this, having a very small amount of this thing can have insurmountable value.
Yeah.
And then you just might have to wait a little longer. But if you learn about it, you might actually gain conviction and just want to buy it because it's the right thing to own. But right now they don't know anything about it. They just know your love for it.
Yeah.
And they want to go find their, it's kind of like a girl. Like, Brandon found a girl.
Yeah.
That's great. What am I gonna do? Steal Brandon's girl? That doesn't sound like cool. I want my own girl. I'm gonna go find my own girl. Like, and I want to get married too. And maybe Brandon's won't work out. Like, and if mine doesn't work out, I want it to last longer. Maybe we'll get engaged and he won't, like,
Yeah.
and that's very fiat. Because fiat is, if I know the mayor, I get a liquor license, you don't.
Yeah.
If I know the boss, play golf with the boss, I get the raise and the promotion, you don't. It's me versus you. And I learned this from Bitcoin Tina, but like don't trade against other people. And don't what they're also hearing is Brandon told me about this, it was 3,000. Well, how am I gonna buy it now? It's 10x. Like,
Yeah.
they're trading as their prior self. And the only person you should trade with is your future self.
Yeah.
Just yourself. But there's so much wrung up in this money thing. And before Bitcoin, think about it this way: if you found a good stock, or you found a good mutual fund, or you found a checking account that had a good yield, did you go talk about it at a party? You know, and I think a lot of us, when we found Bitcoin, because I don't talk about it anymore either, but as a
Yeah.
Bitcoiner, as a podcaster, like people know about, they want me to come up to me, or people like tell them about the thing, go orange pill and do your thing.
Yeah.
I hate that because you wouldn't go up to someone and be like, hey, you know, I found a really good checking account. You need to do this. Before Bitcoin, a lot of us wouldn't talk about economics
Or money
or
in
money,
in
right?
general,
And
right?
maybe that's good or bad, but a lot of times you wouldn't give people advice. You wouldn't, and I feel very strongly about that. Like, don't do this because you think I'm smart or you like what I say. You gotta figure this out for yourself. Like maybe buy $10 because it's two
It's
Starbucks and do it for me or whatever. But like, you gotta do this for yourself. Like,
no, 100%. And I think like, yeah, the orange pilling game is hard. I mean, like you give,
it's dumb. You
yeah.
shouldn't do it.
I mean, because when you tell somebody, hey, Cedric,
Most of it.
yeah, sure, let's do it. Hey, Cedric, you go buy $100 worth of Bitcoin or whatever. As soon as that Bitcoin, if it drops 50%, even 20%, 10%, whatever, you're looking at me, you're like, all right, Brandon, go fuck yourself, buddy. You just lost me all this money, and now I don't trust you for anything, and I want it all to fail, right? I mean, exactly like you said. And I think, part of it, what you were describing earlier about like, hey, I want to go find my own Bitcoin or whatever it is. I think that was a big reason why FTX, BlockFi, Celsius, all these other yield platforms, basically succeeded because it was like, all right, well, it's not only Bitcoin that I'm seeing the price go up or ETH or, AVAX or one of these other shit coins or whatever you were bumping into. Not only am I seeing that go up on the dollar value, I got Alex Mashinsky saying like the banks could pay everybody 7%. And yeah, I mean, it's always the banks that's the bad guy, right? I mean, they're the always ones like holding us back. So, I'm gonna go on and I'm gonna, I'm gonna go like buy this whatever doggy poopy coin and I'm gonna go buy this. And it's not only is it gonna go up a shit ton in price, I'm gonna get 10% of that coin more. And so that's where I think everybody's got burned. And that's where I think a lot of people that kind of had that mindset that you're describing have already gotten to that point. And unfortunately, because they've gotten to that point, they've gotten burned already, or they've seen people get burned. I mean, that's why I think like, FTX, Celsius, like BlockFi, all those things are negatives for people who have lost those money. But the ones that maybe haven't gotten in yet, or like maybe are like, okay, I lost a little bit of money on these accounts, but there's something to this. That's where they're gonna start to look into Bitcoin or like self custody, those kind of things. So I think like I said, it's a negative in the short term. Like I even met some people at BitBlock Boom where I saw you last, I think, where they lost Bitcoin in Mount Gox, and they were like, yeah, I lost in Mount Gox. I forgot what year it was, maybe 2016, 17 time or something. I didn't get in until 2020 again. And I'm kicking myself for not doing that, but they ended up getting back in. Now, will that be a delayed reaction for everybody in these other, FTX, BlockFi, Celsius, all this kind of thing? I don't know. I imagine probably a little bit, but I think like in the end, like it opened the door for them a little bit, and they're still going to be running into the same problems you described 3 4 years down the road, maybe even worse, where we're seeing like inflation at like 6 to 10% now, right? I mean,
way higher.
yeah, CPI, right? I mean, 6% according to the government, which is some inflated metric. But I think at the end of the day, we're going to see more people realize, okay, my rent, Tampa, right? We're right outside of Tampa right now, right? So Tampa, Florida, my rent when I first moved here in an apartment, $1,600, single bedroom, me, my dog, whatever, just ourselves. That same apartment right now, nothing's changed. They haven't done any updates to it. In fact, I think it's gotten even a little worse because multiple people have moved into that place or whatever. That same apartment unit is going for $2,400, and I've been here
how many times?
4 years.
4 years, well.
So I mean, that's like literally 50% increase in 4 years. Yeah, I mean, okay, Tampa's boomed, but still, like,
no, I'm with you.
Yeah, 50% increase is insane, and so
that's why I don't believe any of these CPI readings. Or I mean, you talk about run the numbers. They took housing, they took mortgages out of the CPI and replaced it with rent.
Yeah.
They're fucking with the numbers. And as an accountant, as someone who's always, as an auditor, as a former auditor, I mean, it's so obvious how you can play with numbers, how you can account for things differently. And it's always interesting the fights between finance people and accounting people and the way they psychologically and just even numerically and economically, and you can do things with numbers. I
Well,
mean,
it's not even just like economic numbers. It's just data in general,
yeah,
right?
right, numbers, right.
Yeah.
Numbers, and you have the expression numbers don't lie, but you can tell very different stories with numbers. You can include numbers, exclude numbers. We saw that with COVID. And so, Bitcoin is just a very interesting beast in that regard. When you run the numbers on everything in your life.
Yeah, I mean, hell,
Um,
like I do it all the time with sports to mess with my friends. Like, look, I'm wearing a Bears shirt right now. I'm a Bears fan. When Mitch Trubisky was the Bears quarterback, I grew up in Texas, so I hated Dak Prescott. I hated the Cowboys because all my friends were that. I would pull some random ass statistic that would make Mitch Trubisky look like a better quarterback than Dak Prescott. I mean, like you could do with all
right.
these things, right? I mean, you just move the needle, and like you're seeing that with the debt ceiling. You're seeing that with like CPI.
That's silly. Talk
Yeah,
about a play that, I mean, it's like a Shakespearean play. I mean, they fight over it, and they're gonna raise it eventually.
they raised it
They
today, or
raised it.
like
Oh, they did.
yeah, or like something. They had some like vote on it. I don't know if it
Right.
got shut down or whatever, but yeah. I mean, we're recording this on what is it?
Well,
Wednesday the
that's the
26th.
best thing about Bitcoin is it's helped me disconnect from those things because I could take, whatever value I can afford to save and move it out of that system
Yeah,
and be less subjected to that and then follow the soap opera less. And that I think has so many benefits. I really believe in this strongly from your first sat to just removing yourself psychologically from that drama, and it's like almost like torture or terrorism of a sort.
yeah,
I couldn't imagine like there was stories coming out of Lebanon. It's like you wake up on one day and it's like your money's worth half, and you were going to retire that month, and now it's another 10 years before you
yeah.
retire. I mean, the amount of value being stolen from all of us. And so Bitcoin provides this life raft. I don't think it's big enough for the entire economy yet. I don't see America adopting it anytime soon and giving up the power of the world's reserve currency that they have right now. And they'll even, I think, fight to see that being a sinking ship. And that's what's unfortunate. I hope they eventually America converts to some sort of Bitcoin standard, whether that's making Bitcoin legal as tender, so we don't have sort of tax implications when we spend it, and or maybe adopting it as a reserve or backing the dollar with it, which I think would really be very would weaponize the dollar, and eventually they would lower the ratio. And I get it, but and as an American, and I don't like to be too nationalistic, but like I've benefited from the dollar, and I would love to. Americans hold more Bitcoin than other countries, I think. So I think it would benefit America to adopt Bitcoin. Um, so we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah. And I mean, we'll see how it plays out. It'll be interesting over the next couple of years. But Cedric, I really appreciate you having me in your home and sharing a beer with me, talking a little Bitcoin. Why don't you tell people where they could find you, what you got going on?
Sure, you can find me at Ced Youngelman on Twitter, CedYoungelman on Twitter. Also, the show handle for Bitcoin Matrix podcast _Bitcoin Matrix. Anywhere you listen to podcasts, you can do it there. And we're on YouTube, and we have a lot of great guests, and we talk about Bitcoin. So I hope you check it out sometime.
Yeah,
Thanks for having me on
awesome.
the show,
Yeah, of
man.
course, man. Appreciate you having me. Well, cheers.
Cheers, man.
Yeah, I'll link all that
All
too in
right.
the show notes. So for anybody that wants to check out the Bitcoin Matrix, definitely recommend it. And yeah, Cedric,
And
thanks so
run the
much.
numbers.
Yeah, run the numbers. It's just math, right?
It's just math.
Yeah, exactly.